Hello. I think it's working. So, how you guys doing? Good to see you. Cool. We've got our finishing up our checkpoint on healthy friendships, and then we'll be moving on there after that, and you guys will get to vote on where we want to go next. But where did it go? Where did it go? Where are my notes? Where are my notes? I guess just to kind of summarize while we're here. So what we've been talking about is like the concept of, some of the people may not have been here for the very first one, but the very first one we talked about was the concept of that you really don't choose your friends kind of choose you. Even though, and well, at least when you're growing up, because like friendship is primarily determined by your proximity of how close you are to people. And so when you think about it, when you were a little kid, you were best friends with people in your class, people in your neighborhood. That's who you hung out with. As you've gotten older, you've had a lot more control over your own friendships. Yeah, much me a baby. Okay, don't eat the bugs. She was eating bugs. But you had a lot more control over your friendships, where you actually start to choose, like, okay, I don't really like what that person's doing anymore. I don't want to hang out with them anymore. Hey, this person's got the same interests I have. They watch the same shows I do. I want to talk with them. And it kind of changes as you get more mature. And then after a while, you actually do get to choose your friends. But the thing is, you get to realize pretty quickly how your friends have an influence over you and you have an influence over your friends. So we looked last time at how friendships, like we looked at the perfect example of a friendship, which was David and Jonathan. And I have to joke with Jonathan about this because since he's here, I talk about how we became friends. So, funny story about this. John was a year older than me in school. He was, you can get more food while you're up. He was a year older than me in school. He was homeschooled until like 11th grade. Is that right? 10th grade? 11th grade? Somewhere in there. No, the 10th grade then. Anyway, he was homeschooled during that time. We were in middle school. Junior?
Going into junior.
Oh, that's right. So it would have been your 11th grade year, yeah. And during that time, while he was being homeschooled and whatnot, the only real interaction he had outside of his co-op was with church. And we were going on a mission trip, and both of us signed up to go on the mission trip. Turned out that we were like the two youngest. We were the only middle schoolers that went on the trip. The other ones were all high schoolers, but they were all like older high schoolers who were just too cool for us. Now that you guys are high schoolers, you probably know about that. Like, you think the middle schoolers are just like annoying little kids.
Like,
That's true.
8th grade, you're like cool, but like not cool enough.
Right.
But like 6th graders, you're the most annoying piece of
baloney out there, yeah.
Yeah.
John was unfortunately one of those really annoying middle school kids. On the trip, he found out that I had an ocarina, and he would spend like the entire time playing the ocarina, much to Kelly Dillard's disdain. And she came up to me one day and she was like, I know it's your ocarina, but I'm going to smash it on the ground and buy you a new one. So John would stop playing the stupid thing. I'm like, oh, okay, don't hurt me, Kelly.
Don't hurt me.
Kelly was a bit ferocious. She really was. Anyway, I say all that to say, the first time I really met John, like I kind of knew of him because we were at the same church, but the first time I ever met John was we were getting on the bus to go. And his mom comes up and wants to introduce us because his mom and my mom were in the same Sunday school class, and they got to know each other and were friends, etc. She comes up and kind of like pushes him up to me, and John had no real interest in getting to know me. The look on his face told me as much. And so it was one of those things where, this is my son John, you could be friends with him, and on the trip, and she, in so many words, she did not use those words specifically, but the intent of her message was, you should be friends with my son. And so John just is like, hi, just politely hi, and then like snakes by me, gets on the bus, goes all the way to the very back. And I sat closer to the front because I didn't really know anybody. And about halfway through the trip, would you say, John? I don't know how long it was. He got up to go throw something away in the trash can in the front of the bus, walked by me, saw in my seat, in the seat next to me, I had actually this thing right here. Yeah. This thing right here. So, and he saw the Pokemon on it, and he did this little, like, he walked by and goes, is that Pokemon? Like, yeah, and he saw that Silver was kind of sitting in the top right here. It was like sitting open, and he saw, ironically enough, Pokemon. This is a reenactment. I planned this. Was sitting like right there in top. He's like, is that Pokemon? It's like, yeah. It's like, can I play it? It's like, sure. So he just like raced to the back of the bus. Disappeared for a few hours. So, huh?
John, do you realize the back of the bus is for cool kids? Like, only the cool kids can sit in the back of the bus.
No, I didn't realize that.
And that's why I sit in the front seat.
He was again, like I said, not one of the cool kids. Didn't quite.
He didn't register the back of the bus for the cool kids.
Yeah. Well, he was back there because he knew Kelly's brother, Thomas. Thank you. I can never remember his name. Thomas, and Thomas was back there, and Thomas was cool, and Thomas was actually like really nice to John at the time, and kind of took him under his wing.
So you got a ticket to the back of the bus.
To give you perspective, Thomas was junior at the time. I think he was a junior at the time.
Yes, because then he was going into his senior year.
Yeah, he was going into his senior year, and by far the most popular guy.
He was the Captain America of our youth group.
Yes.
He really was. He was a really cool guy. He actually had a really interesting testimony too. Aside, but anyway, John was really like, this is the guy, you know. This was the cool kid. So I eventually go to the back of the bus to go talk with John. By that point, you had beaten like the first 2 gyms or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and we're grinding to try to get to the next one. So I was like trying to talk to him. I was like, "Hey, how are you?" And he was just like in his Game Boy, just like, "Fine," just kind of giving me the side talks. Well, then we started talking about Pokemon, and that's kind of how it started.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then, fast forward through a little bit of the trip, we kind of were stuck together because we were the only 2 people that were really of the same age at the time, and we had, like, shared Pokemon interest, and I was invested to make sure that I would get my stuff back by the end of the trip, in one piece. But anyway, we started our friendship that way. Well, then, there were 2 Sunday school teachers we had there, Becky and Richard, and I love them both to death. They're some of the people that I admire the absolute most in my entire life. But it was one of those moments we're sitting there with Becky in the bus, and she's like, have you guys ever heard of Jonathan and David? And we're like, who? In the Bible, Jonathan and David. And we're like, oh, yeah, those guys. And because we had heard of them before.
Well, both of us were rather biblically nerdy.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, we both, like, actually enjoyed weird Bible stories. So we actually kind of knew what they were talking about. And she was like, you guys can be the next Jonathan and David and have, like, the best, closest friend ever. You know, best friendship ever. You look out for each other and take care of each other and all of that. And we just kind of looked at each other like, who are you, crazy adult, and why are you trying to force this upon us? This is weird.
My face was, uh-huh.
And I, in my rebellious nature as a teenager, was like, heck no, you can't tell me what to do. I almost, like, didn't talk to John right then and there just to prove a point. Like, no, we are not going to be best friends because you told me I was going to be. But needless to say, we actually ended up continuing to communicate at that point, and then there were other people who ended up joining our little group, which then evolved over time. Because you had Leanne, and then...
Leanne actually came before you.
I know, that's what I mean. You pulled Leanne into that group, and then I pulled Adam into the group, and
Wait,
then
there was
Adam
4
pulled
Adams?
Margaret.
Yep.
Yeah, there were like
Or
4
three
Adams. There were like 4.
4.
Oh, Grosskreitz, but he never came.
Oh.
He was a part of our youth group, part of our church, but he just rarely came to youth events.
Oh, okay.
He would
I
come
was
every
like-
once in a while.
So you
I was
guys
like,
were like,
there was Keaton, Collins, and Sheldon.
Sheldon and Grosskreitz. So,
the Heathers of your youth group.
yes,
But
we were.
Adams.
But the Adams, yes. We were nothing like the Heathers, just so you know.
There's nothing wrong with the Heathers.
Adam Collins was the pretty boy.
Yeah.
So honestly, yes.
Yeah, well, yeah, kind
Heather
of, yeah.
Collins was Heather. Adam Collins
Was Heather,
Chandler.
yeah.
You would
Yeah.
be McNara, the yellow one.
The yellow one, yes, I'd be the yellow one. Yeah. But that was kind of our youth group dynamic. And we became friends since, and friends have come and gone. Adam left. Like, Adam brought Margaret, and then Margaret and Adam kind of left. And then Leanne kind of went off and did her thing. And then Corey kind of came in and all of this stuff. And
Yeah, Corey's
so,
hung around.
yeah. Corey's stuck. He's stuck. But the whole reason I say all of that is we were supposed to be like the Jonathan and David of our group. But it brings a good idea, and this is what kind of the final lesson is tonight, is your circle of influence. And we've kind of talked about this before, but you have your different circles of influence as you come in. So if you want to look up the people, it's 1 Samuel 18. I won't read that. Well, I guess I can read that. It's not going to take but a second. 1 Samuel 18 talks about the actual story. It says, "And after David had finished talking with Saul, Jonathan became one in spirit with David. He loved him as if he loved himself. From that day on, Saul kept David with him and did not let him return to his father's house. And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as he loved himself. Jonathan took off his robe, which he was wearing, and gave it to David, along with his tunic and even his sword, his bow, and his belt. Whatever Saul sent him to do, David did so successfully, and that Saul gave him a high rank in the army. This pleased all the people, and Saul's officers as well." As we continue on in the story, if you want to read it, like read 18 forward, you find out that Jonathan and David's relationship really is very close. Because there's one point where like Saul's trying to kill David, and Jonathan like helps him escape, and then later on, like they kind of have this correspondence thing, even though they're not supposed to hang out anymore, and all the way up until like David just is completely destroyed when Jonathan dies. Sorry, spoiler alert. Jonathan dies. He dies in war. Yeah, but he like has this moment where he just kind of breaks down because of it. But what we get from that is when we talk about like the covenant. Yeah, you know Mendoza's coming, don't you, baby? She knows you're coming. But when we talk about the covenant, the concept of this covenant is the idea of circles of influence. And we've kind of talked about this before, but the idea is that you have these different levels that you allow people into. The outer one being like the circle of concern, as they call it, or the circle of acquaintanceship. It's people who, if they were missing from school, you would ask the question like, wonder where they're at. But you necessarily wouldn't like call them or text them unless you had these are people who probably don't have their number in your phone. But if they were missing at school, you'd probably be like, wonder where they went, kind of thing. They're not like random strangers, you know what I mean? That's a circle of concern. You still chat with them in class. They might be annoying, and that's probably why you're not closer friends with them, but you don't, like, hate being around them. So, from that circle, you move into your circle of, I don't know what to call it, like, circle of friendship, I guess you would say. The circle of life. Yeah. It's that next level up where you actually enjoy spending time together. These were people that you might exchange text message with each other, might snap them back and forth, whatever. These are people who you feel comfortable enough talking with, but you don't like necessarily go deep. You're just like sharing funny memes with them, or like things that you see on YouTube, like, oh my gosh, you should watch this video, kind of thing. It goes from there into the circle of influence, and these are people that actually start to influence your life. These are people that you might have shared something with, and like they can influence you. Like when they start to get into something, you find yourself starting to get into it as well. Have you ever had that happen before, where like you really like something and your friend starts like mimicking you? I've seen this before with like mannerisms. If your friend starts to say something, you'll start to say it too. Yeah, that's your circle of influence. These are the people who actually have some kind of influence on you. And then there's the circle. The final one is a circle of intimacy, and those are the people who are like super close with you. That's only really reserved, should be only reserved for like a few people in your life. And the problem a lot of people have when it comes to friendships is they don't understand that level, and they don't understand to put the barriers between each one of those levels. And this happens with friendships that then turn into relationships. And then there's always that person, you guys probably know this person at school, who overshares. Like they just tell about it. So she is the one. Overshares. Yeah. But they share more information than they really need to be sharing. Or the one who is like really clingy to you. So today I had a friend of mine from camp come over, and he was hanging out, and we were watching some anime and stuff together and having a good time. And he was talking about how there's this one guy in his hallway at the dorms who no one really likes, because he just like inserts himself into everyone's world. Like they had their door cracked to their dorm room, and he just kind of like and like just walked in. They're like, no, get out. They over-insert themselves because they don't understand those boundaries. So the idea of friendship is you want to start thinking about those levels. And it says here, what you don't. That is a weird question. What do you do What do you do once you realize that the people you thought were your true friends are really just your counterfeit friends? That's the hard part, because please don't think that I don't care about your friends or don't want you to have relationships with peers who aren't Christians. The issue is not whether or not your friends are good friends. It's whether or not your friendships are healthy and in going in the right direction. So you might still have a friend who is like a quote Christian, but if they're taking you in a wrong direction, they don't need to be in your circle of influence. They need to be pushed out to your circle of concern. And you have the power now to choose which direction if your friends are taking them. Because, John, as we know, growing up in youth group, there were a lot of gossipy and not healthy Christian people. And there were even some people who were, how we say this, need some psychological help. They're doing their best, but they need a little extra help, you know? I think counseling is a thing that everyone should do. It should just be like a guaranteed thing that everyone should get in life for free. I think it should be free too. Because some people need it more than others, and other people like would only use it when they need it. But we all know those kind of people. But moving on to this last little point here. So the challenges today is think about your friends and whether or not you have healthy friendships, because that's the core of this whole checkpoint that we've been going through. And the whole principle behind it is, and then we'll wrap up, is, if I can get there, are you establishing healthy friendships and avoiding the unhealthy ones? Because your friends will determine the direction and quality of your life. Because if you think about it, especially in your guys' world, when you're struggling with something, you're upset with something, who's the first person you go to? It's not your parents, that's for sure.
Food.
Huh? Food. Thank you, food. I'm glad you understand me. But I mean, like, when you actually need to talk about something, you go to your friends, or you vent to your friends. Those are the ones who, and they're giving you if they're leading you in a healthy direction and they're trying to encourage you, those are the ones you want to keep around. And the ones who are trying to encourage you to not do good things, you might want to consider that and maybe push them out. So, that's it really for our lesson today. We'll pray here in a minute, but I'm curious as to you guys, you have any questions, concerns, or if you have the next direction we want to go. The different options we have to go from here, of the 7 checkpoints, we've done healthy friendships, we've done authentic faith. The next ones you can go into are spiritual disciplines, moral boundaries, turn the page. It's stuck. Wise choices, ultimate authority, and others first. Any of those ones sound interesting? Ouch.
Discipline.
Spiritual disciplines. Okay.
No, just discipline.
Just discipline. Yeah. Most people have a really big misunderstanding when it comes to discipline. And there's a funny video I should show you here in a second about discipline. It's from The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. So, I love that show. Disciplines, anything else? We've got moral boundaries, deals with like relationships, like romantic relationships. Ultimate authority talks about who we should be, or how you can experience true freedom. Others first is about being selfless, and then wise choices, of course, is making wise choices. Spoiler.
What? Plot twist.
Plot twist! Wise choices is actually about...
That's another book that I read.
Plot twist?
No, okay. So this author is like well known for having the biggest spoilers on his title, but doing really big plot twists.
Yeah.
And so I read a book called They Both Die at the End by this author, so I was all like, yo, let's do this. And then they both died at the end, and I was like, I'm confused.
The courage in it.
It's kind of like, that's what animes have gotten to now. They've just started just naming their animes based on the whole plot. Like, That Time I Was Reincarnated as a Slime, or How Not to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, or what are some other ones that have like very specific titles that just describe the anime?
That Time I Got Reincarnated.
I said that one, yeah. That Time I Was Reincarnated as a Slime, How Not to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon. There's like a billion that just have the name, the title is like the plot of it.
Snow White with the red hair.
Snow White with red hair, yeah.
Pretty much it.
It's very creative in their naming styles, but...
Something's really good.
All right, well, I guess we'll go into spiritual disciplines next, right, Emma? Come here. Wanna say hi? Wanna go say hi? On camera? Come here, come. Oh, what are you doing?
Avoiding
Want to say hi on camera? Say hi. Ooh. No, that's Mendoza. But you can go say hi to Mendoza. All right, we will pray and then we will move on to the next one. And I got a funny clip I'll show you. All right, God, we just thank you for today. Help us to learn what it means to really be good, healthy friends to other people. Help us to know how to interact with other people, to know whenever we're being healthy friends and whenever we need to have healthy friends in our lives that are going to direct us. I'm praying. Come here. Come here. I'm praying. Here, let me scoop you. So God, just help us this week to have a good week and to think about where our friends are at and where we can just be better friends. God, we love you. We thank you. We pray these things in your name. Amen. Are you better now? Jeez. She just needed loving, I guess. She's being floppy. All right. See you guys.